We're about to open up a really unsettling case file from the American Midwest. It's a story that medical science at the time, well, they just couldn't explain it. This is a tale about a child whose behavior seemed to defy every single thing they understood about human nature. So, let's set the scene. We're in Missouri, right after the Civil War. This is a time of really tough rebuilding. The whole landscape is still scarred by the conflict and loss. And it's against this backdrop of old wounds that one of the most disturbing stories in the region's history begins to unfold. And the person who documented everything? That was Dr. Samuel Harding, the local physician. He filled up 3 whole journals with his observations, and he wrote that he had witnessed, and I'm quoting here, the most disturbing medical case study ever documented in the American Midwest. He was our eyes and ears, the one person who saw the darkness that everyone else was missing.
And this really gets to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? How does a child, someone we automatically associate with innocence, become the absolute focal point of a community's terror? This is the question that just haunted Dr. Harding, and really everyone involved.
To really get why everyone was so scared, we have to start with the boy's innocent facade. Because on the surface, 8-year-old Timothy Caldwell was the picture of a polite, well-behaved orphan. Nobody had any idea what was lurking underneath. So, Timothy was small for his age, a little kid taken in by his aunt and uncle after his parents were lost to the war and disease. He was always polite, always respectful, never complained about the hard work on the farm. By all accounts, he just seemed like a model child trying to cope with some really tragic circumstances. But Dr. Harding, he saw something else. Right from their very first meeting, he felt this flicker of unease. He noted that Timothy's gaze wasn't shy or curious like a normal kid's. Harding wrote that it was analytical, intense. It was almost as if the boy was the one conducting an examination. And it wasn't just the doctor who felt it. The animals on a neighboring farm seemed to sense it too. A neighbor mentioned that her chickens would go absolutely frantic whenever Timothy came near. They'd squawk and just refuse to go anywhere near the fence. It was like this primal alarm bell that something was deeply, deeply wrong. That quiet unease, well, it didn't stay quiet for long. It gave way to tragedy. A series of so-called accidents started to hit the community, and right at the center of every single one of them was the quiet, polite orphan, Timothy Caldwell. And the deaths happened fast, one right after another. A 5-year-old girl, then a retired logger just 3 weeks later, and then another little boy, just 6 years old. This wasn't just bad luck, you could see a terrifying pattern starting to form. It all began with little Mary Fletcher. Officially, it was a tragic drowning, and it was Timothy who found her body. He said he was just out looking for a lost calf. But what really bothered Dr. Harding was Timothy's story. The way he described the position of her limbs, how her dress was caught, it was all delivered with this chilling clinical precision that was just so unnatural for a kid who just found something so horrific. Then came Henrik Larson. The cause of death was ruled an accidental fall. And once again, guess who found the body? Timothy. His explanation was plausible enough. Maybe the old man got swarmed by bees and just lost his footing. But the evidence, it just didn't add up. There were dead bees all around the body at the bottom of the bluff, but the hives at the top, totally calm, completely undisturbed. The third death just shattered any remaining illusion that these were coincidences. When 6-year-old Jacob Mills went missing, Timothy actually joined the search party, and for days he expertly guided the adults around the woods. Then, on the 4th day, he leads them right to an old abandoned well, claiming he heard crying. They found Jacob barely alive. He died just a few hours later. This was it. This was the turning point. Dr. Harding wasn't just a concerned observer anymore. He was now convinced that these were not accidents, and he started his own quiet, very dark investigation into this 8-year-old boy. And Harding was so methodical about it. He began by quietly asking around about strange livestock deaths on other farms. He started paying way closer attention to Timothy's morbidly clinical questions during his visits. He even started feeding the boy false medical info, just to test him, which Timothy soaked up without question. And every single step was leading him closer to a final, horrifying discovery.
Following a little hint from Timothy himself, Dr. Harding found a hidden cave. But inside, this wasn't some kid's secret clubhouse. It was a gruesome laboratory. He found crude surgical tools, piles and piles of animal bones, and a whole collection of detailed, just horrifying anatomical drawings. The drawings really revealed the cold, scientific nature of his cruelty. They had notes next to them, written in this careful, childish handwriting. Just listen to this one, next to a drawing of a rabbit. Subject remained conscious for approximately 10 minutes after removal of eyes. There's no anger, no malice, just pure experimental curiosity about suffering. And then he found the undeniable proof. Mixed in with the drawings of animals were newer sketches of Mary Fletcher, Henrik Larsen, and Jacob Mills. There were detailed notes about their deaths, the effects of dehydration, the mechanics of drowning. Timothy hadn't just found the victims, he had studied them. He had orchestrated their deaths like they were his experiments. With this evidence in hand, Dr. Harding knew he couldn't wait any longer. He decided he had to confront the boy directly, which led to a conversation that would just defy everything he thought he knew about what it meant to be human. Now get this. When Harding confronted him, Timothy didn't deny a single thing. He confessed, but it wasn't a confession. It was like a lecture. He described holding Mary Fletcher underwater with the detachment of a scientist observing a specimen. He admitted he wanted to watch Jacob Mills die slowly, purely for the data. And then, most chillingly of all, he turned the tables on the doctor, correctly pointing out that Harding's own scientific curiosity was a weakness he could exploit. So what do you do with a kid like this? The legal system was completely unprepared. You can't really prosecute an 8-year-old for murder. So they came to a compromise. Timothy was sent to the Missouri State Hospital for the insane. Not for punishment, but for study. And it's so important to remember the context here. The idea of psychopathy as we understand it today, it just didn't exist. There was no medical framework, no name for a child who was seemingly born without empathy. To the doctors in 1867, Timothy was a complete and utter anomaly. A terrifying one. But here's the thing. Timothy didn't see himself as a patient. He saw the asylum as a new lab, and the staff, well, they were his new test subjects. He learned incredibly quickly how to mimic human emotions perfectly, crying on command, expressing deep remorse, showing gratitude, all while he was secretly studying the people around him, learning how to manipulate them even more effectively. And the ultimate proof of his deception, it was discovered in his journal. On the surface, it was just filled with these childlike entries about his regrets and his hopes for the future, but hidden inside was a sophisticated cipher. And when they cracked it, it revealed his true purpose. He was systematically studying the hospital's security, the staff's routines, everything. His goal was never to get better. It was to get out. And that leads us to the final haunting chapter of this story, because Timothy's time in that asylum, it wasn't an ending. It was just his education. In 1868, after about 18 months, Timothy Caldwell vanished. The official report chalked it up to an escape during a transfer, but Dr. Harding knew better. This wasn't some desperate flight to freedom. This was a graduation. And this whole thing leaves us with a terrifying question that honestly still resonates today. What happens when a mind like Timothy's, a mind with zero empathy but a genius-level understanding of human behavior, is set loose upon the world? Let's end this with Dr. Harding's final journal entry, which he wrote years later in 1891. He actually spent the rest of his life tracking reports of strange deaths, completely convinced Timothy was still out there. His last thought on the matter is just a chilling legacy. The belief that somewhere there walks a man who sees all of us, the rest of humanity, as nothing more than subjects for his experiments, a master of manipulation just hidden in plain sight.